Cold War, a conflict that was not resolved with soldiers and weapons, but rather with secrets, threats, and spies. After World War II, the numbers came in for lives lost for each of the major contributors. The US had lost 419,000, France lost 600,000, Germany around 7 million, but the Soviets had lost over 20 million lives, 14% of their total population, and they were not happy about it. In 1945, the US, Britain, and the Soviet Union met and agreed to a plan. This was known as the Yalta Conference. Germany would be divided into zones controlled by Allied forces. The Soviet Union would receive payment from Germany, and Stalin agreed that Eastern Europeans would have free elections. As a result of the German attack on the Soviet Union during World War II, Stalin occupied a strip of countries across their western border, saying that it was necessary to prevent another attack from the west. Stalin expands communism into these countries, going against the agreements made at the Yalta Conference. Tensions rose between the US and the Soviet Union as Stalin refused to limit communism. In 1948, the Soviets cut off all transport in and out of West Berlin, effectively holding the city hostage and leaving the people inside to starve. In order to combat this, British and American forces transported food and supplies via planes into West Berlin for nearly a year. Eventually, the Soviets lifted the blockade. This became known as the Berlin Airlift. After this, the Cold War had officially begun. The Soviets had an Iron Curtain that split Europe in half, including Korea, which was split into communist North Korea and non-communist South. Similarly, the United States saw Vietnam as another possible victim, and it became involved with the Vietnam War in order to limit the spread of communism. It wasn't until 1960 when the concept of nuclear Armageddon became a very real threat. The closest we ever came to this was during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, where there was a struggle over Soviet missiles that had been placed in Cuba, only 90 miles from the US. Thankfully, President John F. Kennedy resolved the conflict. After the space race in the 60s and 70s, the Cold War had started to come to a close. Apartheid in South Africa had been going on since late 1940, but that too began to dissipate with the war. Then, December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, marking the end of the Cold War.